Part 62, Meeting with Chu Xingyan's family. Zhen Yi and Yi Yang walked at the back, enjoying the scenery in the mountains. When a few people walked around the mountain, a village came into view. The population of the village was still very large. Whether it was adults or children, they were all working in the fields. The scene was spectacular. It's just. Yi Yang watched the people carry wooden barrels to the distant river to fetch water, and frowned and asked the girl at the front, "Girl, why do you use barrels to carry water? Isn't there a water wheel? Why use a barrel to carry water?" The girl thought Yi Yang was a pampered young master, and she didn't know how to farm the fields. So she explained carefully, because of the heavy snow more than 2 months ago, all the crops in the field were frozen to death. So we irrigated the dry land and started to grow rice. I'm not asking this, I'm asking you, why do you use a barrel to fetch water? Where's the water wheel? Why haven't you seen one? The girl turned her head and looked at Yi Yang like an idiot. Why don't you use a wooden barrel? Hold it with your hands? Several guards were almost amused by the girl's words. All of them smirked and dared not look at Yi Yang. Yi Yang was not angry, and continued to ask, "No. I want to ask. Why don't you use water trucks to irrigate the land?" When the water truck was mentioned, the girl's face didn't show much expression, and she replied lightly, "That's true. Only the rich can afford something. How can we ordinary people afford it? Is it very expensive?" This is what Zhen Yi asked. After Yi Yang designed the water wheel, he asked the Ministry of Industry to rush to make the water wheel. Then put it into the public, try to let each village have a water wheel, so as to reduce the burden of farming for the people. The most important thing, he put water wheels in every village for free, but why hasn't a water wheel been seen? Of course it's expensive. A smaller water wheel costs 100 taels. Our village couldn't bear that money, so we didn't ask for it. They would rather use a wooden barrel to carry water than spend that unjust money. Hearing that a water wheel costs so much money, Zhen Yi and Yi Yang glanced at each other, and both read someone's embezzlement in each other's eyes. Yi Yang knew that some officials were miserable and would lose their positions again. I still remember a new farm tool called a curved plow, which can turn the land faster with a curved plow. Why did I look for it for a long time, but no one used it? Yi Yang asked the girl in front. Obviously, these are all farm tools for the benefit of the people. Why are they not used by the people? Everyone was still hoeing the ground with a hoe. That's not cheap. Even if a few families pooled money to buy it, it would cost more than $1 or $2. We couldn't get that much money together, so we didn't buy it. The price is too expensive. They can't afford it. Yi Yang and Zhen Yi looked at each other again, but this time, there was anger in Zhen Yi's eyes. He clearly promoted it for free. But these officials took free things to collect money from the people. If it wasn't for him and Yi Yang going out to play in the palace today, he wouldn't even know that these officials were so daring to fill their own pockets. "Yan Ji, where did you make so many friends?" Someone greeted the girl enthusiastically when they saw the girl. A trace of embarrassment flashed across Chu Xingyan's face. She was a friend. She was clearly a creditor. Tisk tisk. "Yan Ji, what kind of luck did you have to make such a rich young master as a friend?" Some people saw that Zhen Hua and Yi Yang were dressed in luxurious clothes and were escorted by guards. So they knew that their identities were not simple. Some envy Chu Xingyan. I don't know what kind of shit she has gone through, and she can meet those rich people. The embarrassment on Chu Xingyan's face became more and more intense. She did not dare to answer, and hurriedly walked to her house with her head lowered. Seeing that Chu Xingyan was ignoring them, the people in the village started talking. "Hey, it's ruthless to pretend that you don't know us after making rich friends." "That's right, I pity her before." and want to help her introduce a good marriage. Now, I don't think she deserves it. I think it's better to stay away from Chu Xingyan's family and try not to have any contact with them. Yes. Especially his brother, who is already 20, and he is not yet looking for his wife, then he guards a few pots of broken things all day. Doing nothing is really pitiful for Yan Ji, who has to take care of her sick parents and her brother who is stunned all day long. It's not me, this Yan Ji is afraid that she won't be able to marry for the rest of her life. After all, no family would dare to marry such a woman home. If she couldn't let go of her parents, wouldn't she be harming the man by stealing the man's things to help her mother's family? It's not. Several villagers gathered around and had a heated discussion. Yi Yang looked at the few peasant women who were talking ill of others, and really wanted to laugh. It seemed that no matter what time and space, the aunts in the village would always be the intelligence station at the entrance of the village. A few people followed Chu Xingyan and walked into the village with a low thatched cottage made of mud. They were a little surprised that there were such poor villages around the holy city. Since almost all the people in the village are working in the fields, the children who are only 1 or 2 years old are playing in the village, full of curiosity. It was the first time Yi Yang saw such a poor child. His little feet were red from the cold, and he stepped on one after another in the wet soil, which was inexplicably distressing. It was the first time that he had such a strong desire that the Holy Dynasty could quickly move towards a prosperous dynasty, so that children in this world would be like the era before he crossed over to have enough to eat and warm clothes, and that every child could sit in a spacious room, reading and learning in the classroom. Jun Yi walked in the muddy village with 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow. He didn't feel any disgust in his heart, but felt a little distressed. This is his people, who are living in such hardships. Especially when I saw the children who didn't even wear shoes, I felt very distressed. Even the people around the holy city were living such a miserable life. He didn't know how the people living in the more remote mountain villages lived a fiery life. He suddenly took Yi Yang's hand and shocked Yi Yang. Yi Yang tilted his head and saw that Jun Yi's expression showed a hint of distress. Knowing that he was distressed for these children, he patted his hand and said softly, "Trust me, it will get better and better in near future." Because of Lan Yushuan's daily income, the treasury is now filling up day by day. And there are a lot of gold and silver treasures in the treasury of the nomadic dynasty, making the Holy Dynasty even richer. Now that the country has money, it can vigorously develop agriculture, so that the people can be fed and clothed. I suddenly understand why you always say you need to come out to see more and walk away only after leaving the palace. Do you know what life the common people live? Listening to others, it's far from what I saw with my own eyes. Yi Yang didn't expect the people of this dynasty to live so hard. And the children didn't even have a pair of shoes. Suddenly, the sound of broken flower pots came from the front, breaking the sadness of the two. Chu Xingyan, who was walking at the front, heard the sound, her expression condensed, and she ran towards the source of the sound. Yun Qing thought she was going to escape, so he quickly chased after her. Yi Yang froze for a moment, and secretly said, "I'll finish." Is she really a killer? Jun Yi looked a little cold. If Chu Xingyan was the killer, he would never let Chu Xingyan go. Just when several people were in different thoughts, the man shouted loudly, "That's what my brothers and sisters exchanged their lives for. Why? Why?" The man shouted in a hoarse voice at the end. Almost desperate, out of curiosity, the group quickened their pace and ran towards the place where the sound came from. The children in the village naturally heard the movement here, and all of them, with their bare and red feet, trotted towards this side. Chu Xingyan, who ran at the front, ran into the small courtyard enclosed by the fence. and saw that all the pottery pots in the yard were smashed to the ground. Some more mixed flavors. Yi Yang and the others also trotted over, watching the young man in his 20s kneeling on the ground like a child and crying, a little unclear. And among the fragments of pottery pots all over the floor, stood a thin middle-aged man with a squat on his back. He leaned on a cane and looked at the young man crying like a child on the ground. His lips were trembling with anger, and he wanted to curse. But as soon as he opened his mouth, he coughed violently. Cough, cough, cough. The eardrums of the person who heard the violent coughing after a while were painful, and the strong coughing seemed to be coughing out the lungs. Seeing that her father was so uncomfortable, Chu Xingyan hurriedly ran to her father, patted him on the back, and comforted, "Dad, what are you doing? These things are the lifeblood of my brother. How can you give him everything smashed?" The middle-aged man is obviously only about 40 years old. Because of his long-term work, his body is weak and thin, and he is full of white hair. He doesn't look like a man in his 40s, but like a man in his 60s of the elderly. His wrinkled face was full of anger at this time, and he pointed at the young man on the ground and cursed. "This unfilial son. Cough. Cough. I take money. Cough. Read for him, but he gets it for me. Some. Cough, cough. I don't know what to do. Come back. I just cough, cough." The middle-aged man was so angry that he couldn't breathe well, and because he was sick, he had several times almost out of breath and out of breath. "Dad, don't worry. Please don't worry. If something happens to you, what will we do?" Chu Xingyan stared at her father, who looked like he was going to lose his temper at any moment, and was so frightened that she shouted at the man on the ground who was crying bitterly. "Why are you crying? Why don't you help your father in? If something happens to my father, I'll do my best with you." At the end, Chu Xingyan was crying, and she said a cruel word, but it was unexpectedly distressing. The young man kneeling on the ground was thin. He stopped crying, raised his tear-stained face, and looked up at his father, thinking that his father had smashed all his hard work, and the sadness came from it, tears welling up in his eyes. It looks very pitiful. He stood up with difficulty, walked forward with a trembling body, stretched out his hand to help his father enter the room to rest, but the middle-aged man didn't appreciate it. He pushed the young man several steps with a cane, then hunched his back, coughed towards go inside the house. Chu Xingyan stood there in a daze, thinking about her current situation. She suddenly broke down, crouched on the ground and cried.